My parents chose my brother's award over visiting me after a car crash. Now they want my savings to bail him out of a fraud scandal. I refused. About 2 weeks ago, I, 32F, was involved in a horrific car accident. Another automobile struck me from the side as I was making my way home from work. The force of the impact caused my automobile to overturn. I was later told by the paramedics that I was fortunate to be alive. I ultimately needed emergency surgery due to internal bleeding, 2 cracked ribs, and a damaged leg. After the procedure, I stayed in the hospital for a week to recuperate and try to make sense of things. It was difficult to be in the hospital, both mentally and physically. All I wanted was for my parents to come see me as soon as I woke up. I assumed that as soon as they learned about the accident, they would rush over. Even though I didn't anticipate them staying the entire time, I would have been so grateful for a visit. Rather, they were absent for days. I waited for them to stop by or at least give me a call, but they didn't show up. Before I even received a text from them, I believe it was 4 days. To answer your question, my parents were told what had transpired. The hospital informed me that they had contacted them several times and that they are my emergency contacts. A day following my admission, the hospital was able to contact my parents, but the nurses reported that they appeared unconcerned about the situation. That obviously upset me a lot, but I attempted to explain it away by saying that perhaps they were too busy or that something else had come up. Fortunately, my phone was still with me because my possession survived the collision. Every day, at intervals of 5 to 6 hours, I texted my parents, but I never heard back. In the hospital, every day was a nightmare. I attempted to give my parents a lot of wiggle room because I really wanted to see people I knew, but it became more difficult every hour. Fortunately, I wasn't entirely alone because my pals, who reside in other states, were able to get in touch with some family members who live nearby. A family acquaintance came to visit me on the 6th day in the hospital and remarked in passing how wonderful it was that my brother was receiving recognition for his efforts at an award ceremony. I didn't know what she was discussing. She filled me in, but she appeared perplexed that I didn't know. As it happens, my parents didn't come to see me. Instead, they were at my brother's award ceremony. They were aware that I was in the hospital, but instead of helping me through a difficult period, they decided to attend my brother's special occasion. They were so busy getting ready for his big event that they had taken so long to get in touch with me. They were more concerned with their perception of his ceremony than with their daughter's injury. Let me be clear before anyone accuses me of jealously admiring my brother. I don't find it hard to see why they would be proud of him. I am aware that he is gifted and has put a lot of effort into all that he has accomplished. He has always been the golden child, which is the problem. Since we were little, he has received nothing but acclaim for everything he does, while I have largely gone unnoticed. He currently works for a large corporation and is really successful, therefore this award meant a lot to him. However, I was actually convalescing from surgery. A visit or even a phone call to check on me would have been the very least they could have done. I only wanted my parents to be concerned about me, and that was about all I was asking for. They didn't even blink an eyelash when I could have died that day. I was angry and humiliated. I attempted, but was unable, to explain my parents' actions. I then made the decision to contact them and let them know how offended I was. I texted them to express my disbelief that they prioritized my brother's prize over my well-being. I expressed my pain at them not even checking in on me. I didn't have to wait long for an answer for the first time since the accident, and to be honest, I wish they hadn't responded. Their words simply made me feel worse. At first, they attempted to defend their behavior by claiming that they couldn't miss my brother's award because it was a once-in-a-lifetime accomplishment. I informed them that if they had only taken the time to come see me sooner, they wouldn't have missed the event at all. After a while, they gave up trying to argue with me and told me that it was pointless to waste time coming to see me while my brother was out there making the family proud. That hurt more than words can express. It seemed like they only considered me as an afterthought. I wish I could say that their behavior astonished me, but it has always been like this. My brother was perfect as a child. Every action he took was praised. Every accomplishment he made, whether it was a scholarship, a fancy job, or perfect grades, was celebrated. In the meantime, I was constantly in the background. It was never good enough, even when I performed well. Every error I made was viewed as a disaster, and I never received the same level of help. I had the impression that they had already determined I was a failure and that nothing I did would change their thoughts. A week after my brother's award ceremony, my parents unexpectedly arrived at the hospital. I was initially perplexed because, following our last talk, I had given up on contacting them. I knew my parents well enough to understand that they weren't worried when they came to see me. They arrived with phony smiles on their faces and bouquets in their hands. They made an effort to strike up a conversation about how I was doing, but it was obvious that their thoughts were elsewhere. I advised them to just say what was on their mind because I could tell that whatever they were thinking about was going to irritate me. The fact that they showed so little concern for my survival was offensive enough. I didn't need their phony pity. I didn't have to exert much effort. When my mother learned that my brother had been arrested for fraud at his company, she burst into tears. It turned out that my brother was at the heart of a huge fraud scheme that was discovered by the corporation he worked for. He had been directing funds into his personal investments by falsifying the company's accounts. Following an internal investigation, everything was turned over to the police, and he was apprehended after a co-worker alerted the superiors. He is currently being charged with major offenses like wire fraud, forgery, and embezzlement. My parents had apparently already spent a large portion of their cash on hiring attorneys for him. They came to me because they didn't have enough money left to pay his bail. They asked me to utilize the money I had saved up from my work as a project manager at an IT business to help him out. Additionally, they asked whether I knew anyone who could help in any manner or pull some strings. I had the impression that I was merely a tool to clean up my brother's mess, not even their daughter. I continued to experience mental and physical pain. It was unbelievable to me that they would turn to me for assistance after everything. It was like being slapped across the face. When I was laying in a hospital bed after surgery, afraid and alone, they didn't give a damn. But now that their favorite child was in danger, they needed me. I felt bad about it. Perhaps I ought to have assisted for the benefit of my family. The other side of me, though, was angry. The same brother who has always had everything handed to him, why should I save him? My parents have always protected him, so he has never experienced any repercussions. Now, they expect me to do the same. I informed them that I would not assist. I said that even if I did have the money, I wouldn't feel obligated to help him out. I made it obvious who they cared about more and reminded them that they hadn't even come to see me yet. They insisted that I was being self-centered and that families should be together. I couldn't get myself to care, even though they said I would regret not helping my brother. To be honest, my brother has always taken precedence over me. I was never enough for them, no matter how hard I tried. They wanted me to simply forget all the times they disregarded me, left me out, and made me feel unimportant now that they needed something from me. I felt in control of the situation for the first time in my life, and I wasn't going to let that go. I'm laying in my hospital bed right now, feeling a mixture of anger and remorse. Since I said no, my parents haven't spoken to me, and I know they're upset, but I simply can't bring myself to care any longer. I'm done trying to gain their approval. I've wasted too much time. Aida for standing up to my parents after everything they've done to me and not helping my brother. They keep repeating that family should always remain together, therefore I feel like I might be the villain. However, the way they have treated me throughout my life, and particularly now, is something I simply cannot get over. I feel like I've had enough, but I'm not sure what to do. First update. Hello everybody, I wanted to express my gratitude for your support of my initial article. I was able to maintain my position because of that. Although I didn't anticipate updating so quickly, a lot has transpired since then. I was eventually released from the hospital a few days after my parents arrived. I can walk, but my leg fracture requires crutches, and breathing is still difficult as my ribs heal. Going home, finding some serenity, and escaping the turmoil were all things I was looking forward to. The moment I arrived at my apartment, that hope was dashed. I knew things wouldn't go well as soon as I spotted my folks, who were waiting for me just outside my door. They must have called the hospital to find out the precise time of my discharge because I hadn't told them. They wasted no time at all. They began hammering me before I could even remove my keys. They were incensed and informed me that by not helping my brother, I had gone too far. It's the most irate I've ever seen them. They seemed more unhappy with me for refusing than they were with my brother's deception. They talked endlessly about how family should always come first. They said I was selfish and vindictive. They claimed that I was using this circumstance as a means of exacting revenge on them because I had resentment toward my brother. They didn't care that I was still recovering from my near-death experience a week prior. They simply viewed me as a barrier to their beloved son's rescue. They had the audacity to say that they expected me to step up now. They said that this was my opportunity to show that I wasn't a letdown and that I could be part of the family by acting morally. It was crazy. They essentially acknowledged that I wasn't related to them and that helping my brother was the only way I could make amends. Things truly took a turn for the worst when I informed them outright that I wouldn't do it. My mother began crying at my door, screaming things like, "We've already lost one child, and now we're going to lose two, and you're punishing us for loving him more." In contrast, my dad simply became more irate and wasn't attempting to shame me. He repeatedly accused me of being cold-hearted and self-centered, claiming that I had no regard for the family and that I would regret it once they were gone. To be honest, it was everything I could do to not lose it. I was told I was a bad person for not cleaning up my brother's mess, even though I was already fatigued from the hospital stay and could not stand on my crutches. The fact that my parents intentionally treated my brother better and that they love him more than I did just served to exacerbate the situation. I didn't give up though. I warned them that I would call the police if they didn't leave and that I wouldn't pay a dime for his bail or legal bills. After that, they eventually backed off, but not before insulting me once again. My brother's case made headlines a few days after that onslaught at the door. It seems that the deception was far larger than we initially believed. Evidence that he had been transferring business funds for more than a year, some of which had been laundered through fictitious business accounts in his name, was discovered by the police. Additionally, as part of a broader inquiry, they found that he had assisted several colleagues in concealing their embezzled funds. My brother is now being charged with conspiracy and money laundering in addition to fraud. He might spend a significant amount of time behind bars if convicted. The fallout has been harsh. My parents are really freaked out. My brother's reputation has been utterly destroyed after they boasted about his accomplishments to everyone they knew for years. People aren't buying into their attempts to control the situation by claiming that it's all a misunderstanding and that it will all be resolved. When word spread that his son was embroiled in a significant fraud case, my dad even lost a significant client. They're fumbling, and it's obvious they don't know what to do. Naturally, they came stumbling back to me. They made no effort to conceal their desperation this time. They indicated they needed my assistance, just this once, to get through this because they were under a lot of stress. They insisted that they would have an opportunity to fix things, and keep the family together, if I helped my brother, but I understood exactly what that meant. Keeping the family together meant preserving the appearance that their ideal kid had done nothing wrong, and fixing things meant hiding his transgressions. They've gone completely silent after I told them no once more. Nothing, no texts, no calls. They seem to have given up on me, to be honest. They most likely view me as a hopeless failure who abandoned the family when they most needed her. But what do you know? I no longer give a damn. I feel like I'm in charge for the first time in my life. Knowing that my parents just saw me as a fallback option, someone to control in case something goes wrong, hurts. However, it also feels fantastic to put myself first for once and to finally say no. To appease them, I won't help my brother, and I won't allow them to use guilt to get me to correct a situation they started. They must now deal with the repercussions of their decisions. Second update. Since many of you have been inquiring about my condition, the truth is that things have gotten even more problematic. It was my brother who sent me an email. Since he doesn't have access to a phone while incarcerated, he persuaded one of his friends, who still maintains his innocence, to contact me on his behalf. I was initially inclined to simply remove it without reading it. I assumed it was just another attempt to use guilt to get me to assist him. However, my curiosity overcame me, and I opened it. My brother said he was being framed in the email. Although he vowed he wasn't the mastermind, he acknowledged that he was a part of the fraud at his company. He claims that the superiors used him as a scapegoat to hide their own wrongdoing. He even said that while he was trapped taking the fall, certain powerful executives were still able to move freely. He pleaded with me for assistance, not for our parents but because he believed that I was the only one who could save the family from disintegrating entirely. I was genuinely offended by that line. Perhaps it was because my brother finally admitted how poisonous our parents have been. He acknowledged that they have consistently mistreated me and exploited him to stroke their egos. Seeing him acknowledge that was odd because he had always complied with it. I couldn't get rid of the impression, though, that he was just saying anything he felt would persuade me to assist him. He also said that I should help him by saving the family, which is what my parents have been saying ever since this fiasco began. I kept asking myself if there was any truth to what he was saying, even though I promised myself I was done with all of this. Could it be that he was actually being set up? What if I was mistaken about how huge this was? I wanted to know for sure, part of me. I therefore made the decision to investigate. I mentioned the problem to a buddy of mine who is a lawyer and whom I trusted. Since they were not involved in the case, they were unable to provide me with a complete legal breakdown. However, they did offer me some guidance on where to find additional information. After doing some additional research, I discovered that my brother's story wasn't entirely untrue. There was no doubt that he was a fraudster. However, based on my understanding, it appeared that he wasn't the one controlling everything. Evidently, he was not the only victim of the fraud plan. My brother was utilized as a pawn by several high-level executives who had been transferring corporate funds for years. Since he was responsible for overseeing specific accounts, he was held solely responsible when things went south. My brother was left holding the bag because these superiors had purposefully separated themselves from the grunt work. I felt torn after learning all of this. I was upset that he was involved in something so dubious in the first place. On the one hand, he was involved in a serious crime regardless of whether he was the mastermind or merely a pawn. He wasn't just an innocent bystander who unknowingly became involved in anything. He followed through because he knew what he was doing. Most likely, he believed he would never be caught. However, I did feel a little sorry for him at the same time. Knowing that he was exploited by those with greater strength and expertise in hiding their trails is difficult. It's obvious that those executives were well versed in their roles and made sure my brother would bear the brunt of any negative outcomes. If he hadn't been raised in a household that encouraged him to take shortcuts as long as you were successful on the outside, I couldn't help but wonder how things may have turned out. He most likely believed that he was untouchable because of our parents' unceasing protection and adulation. My folks were unexpectedly silent when I told them what I had discovered. Although they didn't want to acknowledge it, I believe that they secretly understood my brother wasn't an innocent victim. They persisted in promoting the same story, claiming that I was selfish for not prioritizing the family and callous for not assisting him, rather than admitting the reality. It was like speaking to a stone wall when you spoke to them. I've made the decision to stop interacting with them at this time. I've made up my mind and I'm sticking with it. No matter how much he wants to blame the executives, my brother still made his bed and now has to lie about it. My parents are at fault if they wish to continue supporting him. If the situations were reversed, I wouldn't ruin myself trying to help someone who wouldn't do anything for me. To be honest, I've not felt so at ease in a long time. Even though my family will never believe it, I know I made the right decision. I've been treated like I didn't matter for far too long, and I'm sick of it. Although my brother's predicament is awful, I am not responsible for fixing it. Once again, I want to thank everyone who has helped me along the way. Although it hasn't been simple, it has been a huge comfort to know that I'm not the only one who feels this way. Third update, I now have enough information to provide you all with an update, even though it has been more than a month since my last post. I'll start with what my parents did when they realized that insulting me and pleading with me wouldn't work. They made the decision to do something else, which was to make me even more miserable than I already was. They contacted several of my aunts, uncles, and cousins to express their disdain and selfishness for not helping my brother. They gave the impression that my refusal to assist was motivated by spite and that I was simply sitting on a mound of money. All they said was that I was a monster and should not be trusted. Only until one of my cousins contacted me and informed me that my parents were spreading unfavorable rumors about me did I learn the truth. They cleverly omitted the fact that they left me in the hospital and hadn't contacted me since, completely twisting the tale to make it seem like I was harboring resentment. I was only ever summoned to assist my brother. I was hurt at first. Even though I had defended myself, it seemed like I was being punished again. I believed that I would be left on my own with no one to support me. However, an unforeseen event occurred. Several distant relatives began contacting me rather than supporting my parents. It turns out that my parents' treatment of others and constant emphasis on my brother caused them to sour relations with a lot of individuals over the years. I was unaware of the depth of this. I started hearing stories from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, and to be honest, they were all more startling than the last. My brother once borrowed a substantial amount of money from her husband to invest in a business venture, according to an aunt who informed me about it. Naturally, the plan failed, and my parents severed all ties with my aunt when she attempted to recoup her money. They even propagated the idea that my aunt was avaricious and unsupportive of her family. According to another cousin, my brother blamed a parking lot attendant for my uncle's car crash at a family gathering a few years ago. To keep the family from being embarrassed, my parents supported him and made sure the rumor didn't get out. They accused my uncle of attempting to damage my brother's reputation when he attempted to address them about it. There were several examples like this one, where my parents either covered up my brother's wrongdoing or silenced anyone who dared to speak up. My brother and another family member had a business partnership, but my parents ruined it because they believed the relative wasn't renowned enough to be affiliated with their son, according to one relative. It was both startling and reassuring to hear all of this. I wasn't insane. It's true that my parents have a long history of ignoring others and hiding behind my brother. For a long time, I believed that I was somehow to blame for my parents' treatment of me, that perhaps I wasn't good enough or didn't live up to their standards. It was never about me, though, as I now see. They constantly wanted to keep my brother safe at any costs. They even avoided family members who questioned them or obstructed their path. For those who wonder why my parents were so in need of my assistance, the answer is because I have established a strong life for myself in spite of their lack of encouragement. I've developed excellent relationships and managed my finances wisely in my role as project manager for a reputable IT company. I've saved money and made prudent investments. My parents knew I had the money, which is why they were so frantic. They failed to realize, however, that I didn't want to help just because I could, especially for those who have treated me like an afterthought my whole life. There has been an update on my brother's case. My parents eventually gathered together enough cash from loans and favors to get him out of jail after I refused to bail him out. However, the inquiry was far from finished. My brother made the decision to assist the authorities a few weeks ago. According to what I understand, he provided information about the higher-ups who were complicit in the scam, which aided in the prosecution's progress. He was able to receive a lighter sentence as a result of his cooperation. He will serve a year and then perform community service in lieu of years in prison. To be honest, that doesn't make me feel any better. His cooperation is commendable, but that doesn't change the fact that he initially decided to participate in the plot. Furthermore, I don't think this event will significantly alter my brother. I don't think he will quit having my parents clean up his mess anytime soon. For my part, I've decided to permanently cut off contact with my parents, which I probably should have done a long time ago. They are blocked on all of my platforms. I even instructed the front desk of my building to deny them entry if they returned without warning. I'm tired of serving as their fallback option, scapegoat, or emotional target. I'm surprisingly not depressed about it. I had assumed that leaving my family would be a great loss, but instead it feels liberating. I can now live my life without having to continually compare myself to my brother or ask for morsels of affection from people who would never show it to me. The family members who got in touch have been incredible. They've shown me that I'm not alone, and I feel supported for the first time in a long time. It's weird because after years of my parents excluding me, I've unexpectedly found a family. In fact, I'm excited to get to know these relatives better because many of them have invited me to family events that my parents won't be there. One of my aunts even expressed regret for not recognizing the situation sooner. She claimed that although she always thought something wasn't right with the way my parents treated me, she kept quiet about it because she didn't want to start a fight. She is now one of my biggest supporters, along with a few other family members. For the first time, I feel hopeful, even though I have no idea what the future contains. I appreciate all of your help and guidance during this trip. Reading your comments helped me realize that I wasn't insane for sticking up for myself, even though it hasn't been easy. It feels so amazing to finally feel like I'm in charge of my life.
Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.